Thursday, and it is the end of the month, which means it is time again for Geek Speak. And today we are doing this month of the world of marketing. Totally tripped over my words right out of the gate. That's great. That's
Starting
totally
off
makes you
good.
feel
Starting
confident.
off good.
Yeah, yeah. Start off strong. And of course, my name is Phelan. I'm with Seymour Digital Media. We're focused on search engine marketing.
And I'm Greg with Original 72 Creative, and we're a full service website graphic design digital marketing firm in Vancouver.
Awesome.
And today
And
we're missing
Rita
Pip
and Pip. Uh,
and
good.
Rena.
Yeah, yeah. They are in. They're doing a peer mentorship program, and so they're going to be. They'll be done fairly soon, so it won't just be the two of us for forever. Um,
Good, good, because they're the real show, right?
oh, I wouldn't go that far, but yes, they. Um, but yeah, I think that this week or this month, there's been a lot of change, a lot of tumult, especially with the AI world, even in relation to SEO, because Google has been kind of cagey about it was going to do search generative experience, and so they've been a little cagier about when they're releasing it, how they're releasing it. Um, apparently they've got a lot of pushback from beta testers that didn't like that it didn't do any citations, which is, I mean, that's kind of AI's raison d'etre, is to basically obscure who actually produced it.
hmm
Um, and so it's been interesting to get for them to get that kind of pushback from people using the platform. And so I think that Google's been trying to find its way with getting that much pushback from their own users of like, we don't actually like this this experience, and I think that they've been kind of spinning their wheels.
I feel like I did get citations when I used Gemini last month for
Mm-hmm.
something, but now I can't recall whether it was in Gemini or whether it was in OpenAI because I used both as sort
Mm.
of test cases to try to do the same thing to see which one produced me something that was better or how closely they were, just to see. Um,
Yeah.
and maybe I thought one of them gave me citations and the other one didn't. Thinking back now, I can't recall which one did.
Well, which is even funnier as well, that they kind of give you the same experience, but they are so blurred between them that you can't even tell which one was doing which thing. And so um, I think that it's also kind of humorous on their platforms of like, you don't even know which one's actually telling you what you think you remember. Um, yeah, I know that. Well, apparently the search generative experience is not Gemini. Gemini is like its competitor to ChatGPT. It's like a replacement for the chat, like when you type into Google, best dog food recipe or something like that. It's just
hmm
going to spit you back as like a chatbot response, similar to like how Bing was doing it with their AI. What was, I forget what Bing's was called, but they yeah, that was kind of the main idea that they were aiming for, and I don't think that they and they haven't really rolled it out to everyone.
Speaking of AI, I keep seeing in the bottom corner of my Windows computer the logo for Copilot, which is going to be their AI in Windows. I assume I haven't done a lot of research on it, but it kind of annoys me when I look down and I see this thing staring at me in the face, and knowing in the future is probably going to be something that annoys the crap out of me, and I just want to turn off.
Yeah, it's like Clippy 2.0 basically. It's
Exactly.
yeah, it's Clippy with a couple of extra like steps basically. Like it can do some things, but it also will still annoy you
Yeah,
significantly.
yeah.
Um, just wait. It would be very funny if they just rebooted Clippy as the Copilot AI, and it's just like, hey, it looks like you're trying to write a document. Uh, it's yeah,
Clippy
that
Clippy could be the mascot for AI.
it's And I'm sure that would do it wonders. That is definitely a system that would definitely give it nothing but good promotional material.
Now it's making me think Clippy was ahead of its time and underappreciated when it came out.
I'm Well, it was like, what was it, 95 when that came out? Well, that was part of Windows 95, like the
Yeah,
Clippy
yeah.
experience. So it's definitely a fairly old school system for it.
I mean, it
The
was really more guided tours of how to do things than it was like it was not artificial intelligence, but
No,
back
it wasn't a large language model or anything like that where it was like
you
doing
know
like complicated like rundowns of like, well, when this word said, this is the other word that usually follows it. It's more just like, hey, it looks like you're writing a work document. Bet you want some help with that. But yeah, but going off that, there's definitely been a lot more news with the open AI stuff of like, so Elon Musk has decided that he's suing Sam Altman and the OpenAI, and so that's related to like them changing from nonprofit to a for profit or limited profit. They were in some weird classification that's like just seems very made up, but
Mhm.
basically was there to like take on investment, and so that one's going on. Also, Sam Altman got booed at South by Southwest, which is usually very pro tech, which is a big deal in that kind of those circles to get that kind of exposure.
Mhm.
And then as
And
well,
was there any context to why the booing of him, or is there something specific that people are unhappy with OpenAI at the moment, or
yeah, mostly because OpenAI has led to massive layoffs at pretty much every big tech company.
right?
Uh,
So it's pertaining to what AI is doing in the job marketplace, and
yeah, so
yeah,
basically,
okay,
when it was like Uber and it was going after taxi drivers, well, it didn't affect the tech people that were doing that. But now the AI has shrunk one ring further in, and now it's coming for the tech guys' jobs. And so now they're realizing like they're getting left outside the wire as it kind of like, more jobs try to get automated away. And so they're unhappy with that part is like coding jobs and stuff like they're like some people are saying like they're trying to get rid of like junior developer positions and stuff like that as well because you can do it with ChatGPT, which is true up until you realize that like eventually your senior people are going to retire and then you're not going to have like a next generation. Like the reason why trade you train people like that is because you need the next generation to step in and do those jobs, and
yeah, yeah.
you're just not going to do it. But that's just me thinking like more than a quarterly profit report. And so yeah, that's kind of the big one that's been going on with it. There's been a lot of pushback when it comes to how OpenAI is interacting with tech jobs as it's taking up more and more bandwidth as well. Not even getting into, it's also pissed off a lot of other people because it's eaten up a lot of the graphics cards as well that would have been going to like Bitcoin and stuff like that. Now they're being redirected to OpenAI and those kind of guys that are eating up more server space as well. And so
Hmm.
it's increasing costs across the board because it turns out that AI is not like some magical thing. It turns out it's just a lot of computing power that requires like big data servers to like compute all this stuff, and it takes a lot of work to do. And so it's pushed out a lot of other people because they have the $10 billion from Microsoft to do that. So yeah, it's causing. I think it's causing a lot more waves in the tech community than they were expecting, and so I think that
Hmm.
they're getting a lot more pushback now as people are kind of realizing that it's coming for them. And so, yeah,
Well,
and
I
so
know
that,
there's a lot of AI being built into a lot of the web platforms that are in use. The theme and services that I tend to gravitate to building my sites, I know
mhm.
AI is being has been released and built into all of that stuff. So being able to generate content, relevant content to your industry on the fly and into your site is in there, and that's very helpful for people to build a site and get like a base. Like if you don't know what you're going to start with, or even a developer like myself who hasn't maybe received content from the customer, to create layouts with some type of relevant to their industry information to give them a preview of what their site could look like and lay out. Because I've found in my time doing web development, it's always been the hardest thing for me to get content from the customer because they know they need a website. And I'm like, okay, we can build a website. Give me what you want to put on your website, and I'll start creating designs and layouts with that content. But they're like, well, I don't know what I want to put on my website. I just
Yeah.
know I need a website.
Yeah. I'd say
So
if you,
creating designs and layouts from thin air with something you don't know even what they want to put on there has always been like a hindrance to being able to do projects efficiently. So
yeah. Well, I agree with you that like AI in a lot of ways has been super helpful for um, if like you're working and it extends what you're working. I think that that's a good use case, and I definitely think that that's where it should be going and putting its efforts into. I just get nervous when they say like, oh, we can replace our entire like support team with chat gpt, and it's like, well, no, the reason why I'm getting a hold of a person is because it's a complex situation that needs like a person to look at to understand
mhm.
like all the things coming in. I just get nervous when like there's like the company Klarna that does all those pay, monthly payments for e-commerce, fired 90% of their support staff and
Yeah.
replaced it with ChatGPT as a cost saving measure. And it's like, well, you're dealing with like money and complicated transactions. It's like I get a little nervous when I think that they could just like magic wand away like all the complexity and just like
And
uh,
just like going back on a couple of weeks ago, how we had the Air Canada situation where
yeah,
their chat gave a customer wrong information, and now will probably get their whatever refund for the ticket, or like, so situations like that are sure to come up in the future with these things. So when you're dealing with a payment processor, and customers who are getting their information from these bots or AI, if it's not going to give it the right information, what kind of implications could there be from in that industry with if it gives out the wrong information?
yeah. I mean, and it's definitely one. Anytime you're dealing with like support, and as soon as it involves something about payments, though, that's when people are going to be the most high tension. When you need people, like it's the easiest because like people are going to be upset when there's money changing hands and they got charged something they weren't supposed to, or they were supposed to give them like that's like the highest tension, or where people get the most agitated, which is understandable, right? It's like your livelihood is getting affected by this company, and if it's just some like ChatGPT response and it's like making stuff up, which it can do, like in the Air Canada situation, like that would be very frustrating. And you kind of, yeah, what are the safeguards? What are the responsibilities? I think that we still haven't figured that part out. So
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of issues still on the table with the AI that are still working themselves out. But also speaking of court cases, one of the big ones that happened this week is going to be that Apple got sued by the U.S. government for monopoly practices. And what's interesting about it is that it's mostly focused around like banking and automobiles, which
Mm.
until I learned more about it, which we've got an article by Matt Stoller who does a lot of the antitrust stuff. That's kind of his beat as a reporter, and so he dove into it. Apparently, what had happened is like if you use Apple Pay, what had happened is they had so many people using Apple Pay that then Apple turned around to the banks and said, "We actually want a percentage of the payments that you process," and because they've got such a lock on that segment of the market that they said,
Mm.
"Well, we know that these people are going to be stuck using Apple Pay. We want to be compensated for from the banks, and so now they're making the banks pay them, as well as auto manufacturers that, like, I guess, I'm familiar with Android Auto, but I've never used like the Apple version. But also, I my car is like ancient, so I don't really like there is not a computer to be found on my car, and
Mhm.
so I'm not really the target market per se. But like apparently the auto industry is like similar to the Apple Pay, where they're like, we know that like X number of people are using Apple, so we want you to route like even your sensors and everything are all going to go to the iPhone, and we're going to make your auto OS, so like the operating system that they use, is going to connect to the Apple system, and like
Mhm.
that's how they wanted to set it up, and so they're being sued over monopoly practices, which
Yeah, I'm curious. I don't know a lot about the auto stuff because I don't have a vehicle that would integrate either with Apple or the Android.
yeah.
But my sister has a vehicle that she hooks up with her iPhone. So I don't know. I'm curious if her vehicle is specifically for Apple,
Well,
or
apparently
if
it's
it
in the
has
next
the
gen.
same functionality if you were an Android user.
Yeah. So the issue in question is, I don't know the details, but apparently it's that the auto manufacturers ratted on Apple because it was going to be in the next year's cars, like so the
Oh,
2025 cars. So it was, they were getting ahead of it, and I guess that this had leaked to the U.S. state that this was going to happen.
right.
So it hasn't. They haven't actually like implemented it yet. It's more that like Apple has been strong arming them. They've been, the auto manufacturers slow walked doing it, and so now they're at a crossroads where it's, they, Apple's kind of been caught saying like, "Hey, we're going to make you do this," and so that's where they kind of went to the government and said, "Hey, could you get them to stop doing this?" And so it's more, yeah, it hasn't happened yet. It's more everything's interoperable right now. It's
Mhm.
more like this was Apple's plan in the future. Of course, like Apple's been trying to like have their own car as well for last, I think 2010 is when they started wanting to have their own car, and they just, apparently they just can't make it work.
I can't remember, but I did watch when whatever senator who was speaking in Congress about the lawsuit being filed, he did list off a bunch of examples of the monopoly situations that they were being sued for. And to
Yeah.
me, he was talking to and referring to a lot of things that have already happened or they've done already in the past.
Oh yeah, I absolutely, yeah, they've, the, I mean, just looking at the app market, right? Like you only have two people that you can buy an app for your phone from.
Mm-hmm.
And you have no recourse if they decide that they're going to pull your app or you violated some TOS, then you have no recourse. And so Apple's already done a lot in that way. And also they, so I get to use one of my favorite words because it has an asphyxiated S, but they are also a monopsony. So they're not only a monopoly, like meaning that they're the only people that sell the product, but
Mm-hmm.
they're also the only buyer, like one of the major buyers of a product as well. So they're also like, because they have such pull with like chip manufacturing, with like, that they can redirect how companies interact with them as well. And they're not the only ones, obviously. Like we have a lot of people that are like number one buyer, but they're definitely in the like hardware market are pretty big up there, that they, because they command so much money that like you kind of have to bend your to their will in a lot of ways. And so it's done a lot of distortions. I'm glad that the government's looking at them to kind of see what they could do to break it up and not have it so concentrated, because I don't think it's been very good for most end users.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Well, we should
thank
probably
you.
move on. We have
Well, we wait,
oh,
I was going to do a segue for this one. Speaking of senators listing off potential crimes of a company, we also have the biggest news that we were talking about with social media, which was TikTok getting banned. Uh, Sorry, I was like,
that was where I was going, but you had a much better transition.
yeah, yeah. As soon as you started talking about the senators in Congress, I was like, yeah, that's the transition. That's the turn point.
Yeah.
And yes, thank you for loving that word. That is a great word that I like to use. But yeah, the TikTok ban. So that is a potent. Well, okay. So sorry, someone just men- mentioned TikTok getting banned. So it's not a ban. It is a forced selling of the company to a company that's held in America.
Well done, America.
That's yeah. So that's it's it's easier to say TikTok getting banned in the U.S. is an easier headline to write than like is being forced to get sold to an American company. But basically,
Well, if that doesn't happen, they would try to ban its use in America.
uh, I,
Is what I understand it as.
yeah, yeah. So what they would try to do, my understanding based on like what I've read about it, is that they're just basically it's a Singaporean company currently that has a Chinese parent company, and what they're trying to do is force the sale to an American company that be more compliant with like following anything that the U.S. wants it to do.
Mhm.
And right now it's passed the House, and it's going to basically just sit there and probably die in the Senate, which is most legislation in the U.S. And yeah, so it's not. I wouldn't stress about it just yet. But yeah, right now I don't. What they're trying to do is force the sale, and I think you and I were talking about like what would be the mechanism to do that. And it's basically that they would make it that any sort of TikTok ads, which is how they generate money, it would just basically they couldn't run it because the credit card payment processing would the processor would be told by the U.S. government like if you
Mhm.
process these payments. Apparently, it's $100,000 fine per transaction, and Visa and Mastercard do up to 10 million transactions a minute. So that like you could see how fast like if you screw up by 1 minute, like you were on the hook for billions of dollars. So like it would be
Yeah.
they're not just like it's a serious one that like Visa and Mastercard pulled out of Russia like back in 2022 when the Ukraine stuff went down because they were potentially going to get banned, and so they just preemptively were like, no, well, we're not even going to like process it because if we have a record that we had done that, like no, we're just not even going to come close. So
Yeah. Yeah.
and so I I don't know how it's going to shake out. My guess is that
So
it's not.
they're doing this to try to force the sale. And the
Yeah,
other thing too is that I heard that the TikTok CEO has flat out come out and said they're not selling.
yeah, yeah. That's what I had heard as well. Is that he
Yeah.
said, come and take it." Which personally I think is probably the right. If I were the CEO, I would just say like pound sand, come and see what you can do to take it and really make them work for it because I I just don't see it happening. I see a lot of smoke, a lot of bluster. It's going to be all bark no bite.
As it pertains to Canada, do you see anything that's happening in the states impacting how TikTok is going to be used in Canada, or are we on an island up here and have nothing to do with if that were to happen in the states?
I mean, I see it as if we did anything about TikTok, we're just not going to get the service. They're just going to IP block us like Facebook does with sharing news because they have to pay for it. And like
Mm-hmm.
we can pass all the laws we want. And then they're such big companies that they could just, well, they'll just refuse service to us. I just don't. Yeah, if we did anything like that, we would just, they would just ignore us basically, or just say like, okay, fine. If you're going to do this, then we're going to pull out entirely.
Nobody cares about Canadians anyway, do they?
Well, we're only like 40 million people, right? Compared to like the
What?
U.S. is
41 million now.
oh, okay, fair enough. Well, I always do 10% of the United States. Like we've almost like tracked perfectly. We're 10% of the United States population.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like we're basically nobody in as far as the country goes. So like we're rounding error for most of these companies.
All right. I don't have any great transition into the next, but we should move on with only 4 minutes left. We have a bunch of other
Yeah.
things.
Well,
One relating to design that I thought was interesting. We don't really have a lot of
oh
design
yeah.
related news things that we bring up, but this is a quick one to go through. Everybody's favorite online tool, Canva,
Mm-hmm.
acquired a platform called Affinity. I don't know if a lot of people know what Affinity is, but Affinity basically is an alternative to some of the Adobe products like Photoshop and
Ah.
um, InDesign and things like that. So they acquired Affinity and
Mm-hmm.
are thinking that that will give them Affinity a little bit bigger of a boost in the AI push because Adobe has been putting out so many AI features in their
Yeah.
design platform, and I guess Affinity has not been able to keep up. So because Canva has AI already built into a lot of it, that acquisition by Canva, they feel that it'll be a good merger to bring AI quicker into the Affinity products to keep up with competition between Affinity and Adobe, I guess, or have that alternative that doesn't just fall by the wayside because they can't implement that quick enough. So that should be interesting to see over the next
Yeah,
little
yeah.
bit.
No, that's definitely interesting because yeah, Canva has pretty deep pockets as well. They're like $1 billion tech company from Australia.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
and so it's definitely interesting to see them go into a bit of a race with Adobe, which is kind of bound to happen because Adobe is kind of one of those weird companies that you don't realize that like Google Analytics is a response to Adobe Analytics. So like that's how old they've been around and how long they've been doing this kind of stuff at an enterprise level. That they've been. So yeah, it's kind of interesting to see the rivalry come to the ground between like Adobe and Canva as they're especially in the race because I know that's an interesting one as well with the AI stuff that's circling back to like jobs and stuff that a lot of people say that the AI implementations on Adobe are some of the best that have happened because they're like they actually speed up doing a bunch of like weird finicky design work that would
Yeah.
that used to be like a mainstay of what people would do, but like with the AI stuff it actually does a pretty good job at extending a photo a little bit or like erasing stuff from backgrounds. Like it actually does it
Mhm.
pretty quick.
Yeah, used in the right context and for business purposes like creating graphics for whatever your design, whatever kind of things you need for your site, it's effective. But just in general, like that's aside from being able to the fact that you can manipulate images into things that maybe are questionable or not real.
Yeah.
The downside
Well, yes, that's
of
a
AI images, but
yeah.
and then our last bit of business. Sorry, we only have a couple minutes
Oh
left,
yeah,
so
no,
I
no.
figured
I was going to do the
we'll
transition to the
move
last bit
on.
of business of like
Yeah, yeah. The biggest, I guess, would be the word for WordPress. We've got 6.5. It was scheduled for release today, actually, but they pushed that off for a week till April 2nd to do further testing and another release candidate. A couple of the notable things coming out in the next WordPress is that it will have a fonts library, so it'll be integrated, so you
hmm,
can get all of your Google fonts directly within WordPress now. And I know that's sort of been something that's been built into a couple of themes, but it'll
hmm.
be available in WordPress. Custom field blocks is another interesting one that I'm looking forward to seeing what that's all about. There's also going to be plugin dependency notifications. So when you look for your plugins, um, you'll see dependency checks
Hmm.
if things are now if other plugins are now required, or I don't know if it has anything to do with potential conflicts. But when you go into the plugin area, you'll actually see a plugin dependency section, and it'll give you some
Oh,
information on whether that plugin requires something else or what have you. So that'll be useful.
yeah.
And then sync patterns are going to get more powerful, and there's a handful of block editor improvements coming with this release.
Nice. And then also, I want to touch on Astra Theme and Rank Math both had major vulnerabilities. So if you are using either of those, make sure to get the updates once they fixed that issue.
Yeah, I like how we saved that important stuff for last.
It's all kind of important. It wasn't like anything was like superfluous. People need their TikToks, and people need to
Yeah,
know if they're going to get laid off because of AI. Uh, but
yeah,
yeah,
for
it's
sure. Yeah, that was everything we identified for this month. So that's good.
yeah, that's pretty good. And it leaves us just to say thanks for watching, and you will be seeing me next week on. I believe I'm going to be doing a live about with a special guest that's going to be talking about sales as an agency, or
Awesome. Is next week with Ashley, or is
it's
she?
actually it's.
I don't.
I thought it was frantically checking. I thought it was going to be with. Uh, oh, we need to update the banner, but I believe that mine is next week with
Oh, you're meeting with Darby, I think.
Darby. Yes, that's correct, and we're going to be talking about agency sales.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, we'll be keep your eyes peeled for that one. And in the meantime, I'll post the Apple Monopoly write up as well in the comments in Cyberpunk Geeks Marketing Mixer, where you can join us and continue the conversation there. Um,
Awesome.
and my name's Phelan.
And I'm Greg. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Bye for now.